I just attended the virtual Adobe Max conference with hundreds of thousands of other creatives last week. It's an overwhelming experience. The technology, the art, the talent, the amazing number of people attending across the entire world. You can't attend this event, even virtually, without a crashing wave of inspiration. I used the Lightroom Mobile app after my first Adobe Max, which I believe was 2017, and I loved it, but I fell off the bandwagon. So here we are, another Max, another wave of inspiration, so I'm here to try and keep that going. I'm sharing my editing process as I relearn this app and try to improve my editing knowledge. I hope to give you a few tips on making those changes, those drastic improvements to your own photos, but my personal long-term goal is to make photography more, and creativity, more of a habit than just like an occasional thing, and maybe I'll get good at it. So Lightroom Mobile is a free app, and you don't even need a Creative Cloud account to use it. So after I downloaded the app, I selected to log in with Facebook, oops, which I realize is probably selling my soul, but I honestly thought that maybe it was what I used 3 years ago to log in, and maybe it would just be conveniently there, but it wasn't. So it did actually create an account for me automatically, so that was kind of nice. With that, I'm gonna go ahead and open the app.
All right, let's get started. So the first thing I'm gonna do is add a new photo to my Lightroom library. Towards the bottom right hand of the screen, there's a little blue oval. There's the camera, and then there's the add photo icon. So I'm gonna click on that add photo and then go from my camera roll. Now, I took this photo a while ago, but I duplicated it today in preparation for this, and it's right up here at the top. I'm gonna pick my daughter here in the monkey costume. So first what I'm gonna do is, you can see that you could start editing here. What I'm gonna do is add this to the library first. So I click the check mark at the check mark at the upper right corner, and it has been successfully added to my photos. So now I'm gonna click into that picture of her, and there she is. What a little cutie. So Halloween is coming up, and whether it's you or your kids or your friends, I'm sure there's going to be loads of pictures of people in costumes. So let's see how we can make this look even better. So if you look at the bottom left hand of the screen, there's the Selective and the Healing. There's a little blue circle with the star in it. And what that means is those are premium options. So let's click one. I can continue through that. Say I want this. Okay. I could try premium free for 7 days, or I could pay $4.99 a month. Now I will say eventually I probably will get this, the premium service. I think just for now I want to see what I can do with this tool with the free access. So I'm going to X out of here, say no thank you for now. I could crop it, I'm not going to. Profiles are, some photos have more options. And that's something I'll do in the future too, is that you can take photos within the Lightroom app, and those photos typically have more of these options. But since this was taken with my iPhone camera, I have color and I have monochrome. I'm gonna leave it color for now. So the next option here, as we get into the actual editing, is auto. I'm gonna click that. Didn't make that much of a difference. I typically don't like the auto setting. Sometimes it is a helpful starting point, but for now I'm just gonna go back. I'm also fairly stubborn, and I like to do things on my own. So let's start with the light settings. So you have exposure and contrast, highlights and shadows, whites and blacks. A lot of opposites happening there. But what I'm gonna start with is the curve. So go into the curve settings. I like to start on that first circle all the way on the left with all 3 colors. So what I do here is I set the kind of like how bright the photo can be and how dark the photo can be. So on the bottom left-hand corner, I'm gonna drag that over to the right just a tad. I'll do something more extreme so you can see what it does. Bring it back over just a bit. And that just really, it darkens the darker parts of the photo. And you can do the same with the lights. You can make it really, really light or blown out. Or you can really change the mood of the photo by making it a lot darker. So I'm gonna bring it down just a tad because I think her cheeks are a little bit blown out. And then you can also change the colors here. So I feel like there's a lot of red tones happening. I'm gonna bring that down just a tad, and you can see that I think the grass normalized a little bit, and I think she looks a little less orangey. I'm gonna leave the other 2 alone for now. I usually don't mess with those until later. And I'm gonna say the same for exposure and contrast. I will mess with those in a little bit, maybe. I usually like to try and play with the highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks first. So let's bring the highlights. Okay, and something else I do is I go extremes just to see kind of what I'm playing with, and then I kind of rein it in. And I'm gonna end up on 4 there. Now I mostly do this, you know, I'm mostly just playing around. I just take a look at it, see what I like, and go from there. I don't have a definitive style. I don't have like a rule book that I go by or anything like that. I'm just playing with the settings and seeing what, to my eye, looks the best for that specific photo. So let's bring the whites, I'm gonna guess down. Yeah, if we go up anymore, like she's just gonna be so blown out. And I mean, honestly, you can just leave it at 0. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna double click on that white setting, and it's just gonna bring it back to 0 for me. It's just gonna set it right back to the default. It's gonna reset that setting. So the blacks, we can bring those. I usually like my blacks a little darker. I like a little contrast in my photos. So now that I've done all of that, I'm gonna go back and just hit that exposure, see what I could do. I'm gonna say, you know what, I like it the way I had it. So let's go back into contrast now. Again, I think I just liked it the way I had it, so I'm gonna double click that. And let's move on to the color settings. So here we are looking at white balance. And again, I like to try things on my own first. But I get so lost in the white balance, I'm gonna be completely honest with you. Like sometimes I'll just do I'll do stuff that I think looks good. Like I think that looks pretty decent, but let's grab the eyedropper and throw it on. You need to find a neutral part of the photo. So I know her shoes are going to see it says click on a darker neutral area because their shoes are a little blown out. They're very white. They're not exactly neutral. So let's try this part of her monkey suit. Wow, that's green. Maybe her little hand? Nope. What about her little face? Oh wow, it's just so green. I think that looks a little more natural. Maybe we can try like the fence back here. Is that too? Oh, see, I like that. Now, here is an issue that I have with Lightroom. Oh. The issue that I have with Lightroom is that, so I'm picking this fence as my white balance. And sometimes that little check mark goes off of the screen and you can't click it. Let's see if it works now. Yeah, see, I can't click that, so maybe, you know, I kind of like that white balance. I don't know, just move it around the screen. Oh, so green. I think that looks fairly normal. I'm just gonna click that. And then you can always come back and continue to edit that color. And then just click undo, which is that arrow up at the top, directly above her head. Okay, I'm gonna go down to vibrance and turn that up a tad. Again, I'm a woman of extremes. Let's see what it looks like and then rein it in. So I'm just gonna actually just bring it back down to 0. I think saturation is too harsh most of the time, although that one I didn't mind. Okay. I kind of like where she's at. Let's move into color grading. So this kind of, you can select a color that will fill in like your shadows or your highlights or your midtones. So what it starts on here is your shadows. And you can see that down underneath the circle, it tells you that that's the shadows. So what you do is you put your finger on that circle and you just kind of move it around. And as you can see, the shadows of the image kind of turn into the color that I'm hovering on. I like a blue shadow, not too dark. Let's leave it right about there. And then you can mess with these different settings within that. So luminance really brightens those shadows into that color. I like darker shadows. I'm gonna bring it down a tad. Blending. Balance. You know, I honestly don't know what these settings do. I just mess with it and see if I like it. I'm gonna leave that one fairly high. Now let's go into midtones. I think if we wanted to give it more of like a fall look, we could stick into these orange tones. Let's do that. I'm just gonna leave it right there. And these are the highlights. And sometimes, you know, because I picked blue shadows, I might go on the opposite side of the spectrum to give the photo a little more balance. This one I think I might just leave how it was. I'm going to double tap in the circle and it's going to reset back to the center. Click done. I'll just show you the other one. So the other one is global. It changes kind of everything in the photo. All right, double tap, done. All right, so that is it in color. Let's move on to effects. So for this one, I like to zoom in a tad. So let's look at texture. There are photos that lend itself to this a little bit more than, I don't really like to use texture on human faces. I think that makes it look way too like, oh, she had blemishes and we had to cover her up. Oh, all that baby acne. And if you go too far this way, I just feel like it looks so grainy. I don't know, fake. So I'm just gonna leave texture at 0. Don't really like it all that much. Clarity, I would say the same. I really don't like to use it on human faces, but there are photos that I think it makes sense for. If it was a more zoomed out photo and not so much about her face. Dehaze. Oh, there we go. I was wondering why it wasn't changing much. This is another setting you can use if you don't want to mess with your contrast too much, though you can hit the dehaze a little bit later. I like to add a little vignettes to my photos because I like to have, I just think it gives the subject a little more focus. As you can see the darkness creeping in from the sides. It really puts her in a spotlight, which she deserves. Alright, so I'm going to make this a little extreme just so you can see the differences. So there's my extreme vignette. Now let's change that midpoint, right? We can bring it in, bring it out. So I'm going to bring it in just a tad. And then the feather decides like kind of what the gradient of that vignette is. So is it going to be real sharp and clear, or is it going to be a little bit more feathered? You can change the shape of it. Make it round. At this point, I'm going to bring that vignette, I'm going to rein it in a little bit. Bring it back down to the -30s. All right, let's move on to detail. Sharpening. Sharpen some details again. Like I don't know. I haven't used this one a whole lot. I think it makes her face look so grainy. Look at that, it doesn't look real. So I'm gonna double tap on that, bring it back in. Maybe it's just because I zoomed in. Nope, I don't like it. Part of it, partially the zoom, partially the sharpening. Either way, don't want it. Now optics, I don't know what chromatic aberration is. I will look that up and maybe we'll talk about that in a different video. Enable lens corrections a lot of times. It's almost like she's in a minor fisheye. And I always think this is so strange because when you first turn it on, you're like, oh wow, that's weird. And then you look at it for like a second longer and it looks totally normal. So geometry, that's another thing that's part of the premium selection. So like I mentioned earlier, I'm stubborn. I like to do things on my own. So I'm going to skip over presets for now. What I'm going to do is go to versions. I'm going to create a version, and I typically title it V1 for version 1. I'm going to create that. But now what I like to do is look at the original versus what I've done. And, you know, as you're doing the edits, kind of feels like you're not doing a whole lot, or maybe it does, but it's just such a crazy difference to me when I go back to this point. And I see the stark contrast between the two. So now I'm going to go back into settings, and now I'll go into presets and let Lightroom try and tell me what to do. So natural, bright, high contrast and detail. That's one I use for my animals a lot. I really like that setting for animals. Vivid and matte. I like that the bright just really brought out her face. I'm going to hit X just to see how it looks against what I've done already. Yeah, see now she looks a little dark, so I'm going to go back into presets. I'm going to select bright. I'm going to hit that check mark and apply it. So now let's go back into versions, and you can look at version 1 versus my current. I don't know, because even though it's brighter, I feel like it's a little more washed out. So again, for me, this is all trial and error. I just mess with stuff. I don't have a solid workflow or anything like that. So a lot of times after I make a version, I'll go back and just keep you know, turning the gears, see what else I can do. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go back into the light settings, and maybe let's bring the shadows back down a tad. see what the exposure can do. Oh, just kidding, undo. I'm pretty happy with this. Let's see what we can do in color. I feel like she needs, wrong one. Okay, so let's go into the color, and what I'm going to try and do now is bring out some color in her face. So I'm going to go into orange. I'm going to hit that saturation specifically, and see it's actually bringing out a lot more of her belly than her face, I would say. Double click that, bring it back to normal. Let's go into red. I think we're hitting her face on that one. So I'll change the hue so it's maybe not so red and a little more orange. Bring up the saturation a tad. And then we could, like, you know, change the luminance. Ooh, it's actually hitting her belly again quite a bit. Maybe her face is just too white. By too white, I mean too blown out. Okay, so what I can actually do is I can just select her face. Wait, is my finger on her face? I don't know, it's so hard to tell. Okay. Oh, okay, all right, there it is. So with this tool, you click on the area that you want to edit. Let's undo that last one. So I click on her face, or I tap her face with my finger, and I can drag down to pull all of the color out of her face. Or I can drag up, which this is kind of a silly setting because you can't see your face when your finger's on top of it. But if you drag over to the left or right, then you can see the face while you make these edits. Okay, let's bring it up. Let's just leave it in this area. I do think her face is just too blown out. I don't know if there's much I can do about that. Let's try the luminance. Whoa, excuse me, lady, what happened to your face? I made someone angry. Let's undo that immediately. Wow. Okay, hue. Okay. I'm learning new things just as you are. So when you drag left or right first, that's how it's going to change the setting. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click on her, I'm gonna tap on her face, I'm gonna drag down and up first, and then I'm gonna go left, which allows me to see her face while I change the hue. My finger is not in the way. Plus 46? I don't know. What do you guys think? Ooh, I am still in the setting. Let's go ahead and say, hey, I'm done. How do I get out of this? Okay, done. Let's zoom in. I think she looks pretty good. Go back over to our version, see how much it really changed since the last one. I kind of like it. It is way, way better than the original, which I feel like the original didn't look this bad when I started, but now it looks terrible. So I'm gonna create a new version. Like I said, I just keep going. Sometimes I have 5 versions of something before I finally decide to post it or print it or whatever I do with it. Like now I'm looking at it, I'm like, maybe I do want it to be a little more like green in the shadows. I don't know, shadows? And like as always, I just go back to versions and see how it compares to the previous one. This one's not a huge change. I think that's good enough for now. So I'm gonna go ahead and, you know, I don't even know if I'm gonna save this newest version. It's not a big enough difference for me to care. So I'm just gonna apply this last version. Those are now my current settings. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit the little box with the arrow up at the top to save this back to my camera roll. Now, other options that you can do are, you can hit share to and go directly to a text message or AirDrop or mail, or I guess right back into Lightroom. Instagram, probably a big one. If you're trying to share with people on Zoom, Snapchat, I mean, it's whatever apps you have on your phone that you can share photos through should be there. All right, so again, that is just, you know, the original. And back to after those edits. I don't think this took too long, and again, I play around a lot.
So Instagram and other photo sharing apps have a lot of filters, but Lightroom is an easy way to give you more control over your edits instead of just selecting those pre-existing ones. In my next video, we're gonna look at quickly editing multiple photos. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you learned something, or even just if you enjoyed your time with me. I will see you next time.